right, James.
Hey, guys.
We're in person today.
How's it going? How's it going, Josh? I'm here with you. It's been forever.
Dude, it's been so long since we've done an in-person podcast together, since it was Christmas break.
Christmas break, yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be a little bit different today. We're hoping everything works out. But
Dude, yeah, that's why we didn't do this on Thursday. I was banking on seeing my buddy at his beautiful beachfront house. It's looking absolutely amazing. It's a great day today. Got a lot of stuff going on, but most importantly, we got to talk about some ball today, man, because oh my goodness, this, post June 1st, aka
league season,
the new league season, right? Fresh start, fresh moves, and a lot of fresh moves at that. Continuing with the talk, we're going to be talking about the AFC North, Steelers, Bengals, Browns, Ravens, all that jazz. But we're also going to be talking about the trades that just happened and probably shocked the NFL world and, most importantly, screwed the entire NFC for 1 or 2 years to come. So, without further ado, buddy, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. First and foremost, with the new league season post June 1st, this is when you see a lot of those trades or potential cut casualties. With the new league season, a lot of the contracts are different. Therefore, a lot of teams can save money or are just able to kind of make those big time moves. So we've seen 2 already, those big time trades. I would not be surprised before the season starts, we see a few more.
Well, which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about the least of the 2.
It's just still a pretty big deal.
So insane.
Is A.J. Brown reuniting with his favorite team, the team he had a rug of even when he was in Philadelphia, and that is the New England Patriots. The Patriots acquire 28-year-old, will be 29 when the league season starts, A.J. Brown from the Philadelphia Eagles in exchange for a 2028 first-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. Josh, give me the deets, man. What do you think about this move for both teams?
Yeah, first and foremost, no one should be surprised. This is a trade that's been talked about since prior to the draft, and it was well known that it was going to wait until the next league season. I think there was some talks out there with some other potential teams coming into play, but I think that's all just kind of smoke. The Patriots needed their bona fide wide receiver 1. They tried with Stephon Diggs last year. He was productive, but when they needed him most, he was an aging veteran. They have some other guys on there. Pop Douglas is a fantastic slot. Keyshawn Booty's pretty good. But they really needed that big physical one-on-one possession guy, and that's what they have with A.J. Brown. Now, for the Eagles, I don't think anybody should be surprised. Again, I think over the last season and a half, there's been a lot of instances where A.J. Brown was not always...
Not the best. Not the best team.
Exactly. Either not the best teammate or he was more focused on reading his book rather than playing. So I shouldn't be surprised at all.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's also interesting now looking at the Eagles wide receiver room. You have Devontae Smith, who, as a former, 16th overall pick, should become that bona fide wide receiver 1. Behind him, you have first round pick Malachi Lemon. You have other trade acquisition in Dontavius Wicks. It's a interesting group that has high potential, but there's still a lot of question marks with such a young group. So I think you could definitely see a reduction in the passing ability from this Eagles team, especially with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who sometimes has trouble being able to layer some of those passes. But overall, I think no one should be surprised by this A.J. Brown trade. I think the Patriots did go out and get the best receiver that was on the market and should help propel them to coming back to that Super Bowl. For the Eagles, you were able to get a lot out of this aging, disgruntled wide receiver. So I'm glad they're doing that. So to me, I would say about a B+ for both sides.
Yeah, I think you got to look at it from both teams' perspectives. I think for the Eagles, it sucks. A.J. Brown was a great receiver for them. He definitely did a lot, for them. But being able to trade a receiver who didn't even want to play on your team was, I don't know if you saw this one, leaking information and leaking insider beef to reporters to stir up the pot to, quote unquote, motivate the team. Getting a first-round pick and a fifth-round pick when, you think about it, a little while back, for other football fans, you were able to just trade for him for a first-round pick.
Yep.
So you get the exact same, you get about 4 years from this guy, you basically flip him for exactly what you traded him for,
Yeah.
And on top of it, you kind of prepared for it. You got Dontavion Wicks, you got Mekhi Lemon. Now, are they necessarily the same as AJ Brown? Are they going to replicate that? I don't think so. Definitely not in the first year. And, you still put that risk, but I think Mekhi Lemon's a very highly touted prospect, and Wicks kind of has some of that upside going forward. So I like it for Philly. For New England, it's the classic thing, right? Your quarterback's on a rookie contract. Let's get him weapons to win a Super Bowl. That was the big thing. When you had 33-year-old wide receiver Stephon Diggs as your wide receiver one, and you made it to the Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
Think about what you can do now when you have a arguably top 10 receiver in the league on your team. And it's good because they didn't give up a 2027 first-round pick because of the considerations that the 2027 class is going to be a really good class. You get a guy who wants to be there, has good respect for the coach and Mike Vrabel. They have a good relationship, and you're trying to win. You're trying to win it all, and you're looking at the comparison of Josh Allen, right? This another good comparison is Josh Allen gets DJ Moore for a second-round pick as his wide receiver one.
Who's also an older player.
Who's older.
Yeah,
DJ
Moore is 30 years old, is coming off of 2 to 3 really down years.
Yes.
So.
And now Drake May has AJ Brown and also has Romeo Dobbs.
Yeah.
Kayshon Boutte will probably not be on the team because I know he is really wanting to have a trade. But yeah, I think it's a win for both sides where you look at it, right? You traded a disgruntled star for Philly. You traded a disgruntled star for really good capital. And for New England, you get a serious wide receiver one where you're in direct competition with Buffalo to try and clinch their division, and you get a really good player. So I think it's the same thing. I think it's a B+ on both sides. Maybe I'd give a little more of an edge to New England considering their situation, but I do like it for both teams.
Yeah, I think bottom line, both these offenses are going to completely change. The Patriots last year didn't necessarily have that big physical wide receiver. I think they try to have Kayshon Boutte be that, but he was able to make some really big plays in key moments, but he's not your potential all-pro, Pro Bowl wide receiver. For the Eagles, your entire offense has changed. It's now you can't do Barkley up the middle twice and then deep ball AJ Brown anymore.
Yes.
So your offense is complete. You might have to do deep ball Devontae Smith or Jalen Hurts scramble. So it's going to be a whole kind of different offenses for both teams. I do think the window for the Eagles is slowly closing now that with AJ Brown gone, and we've kind of seen over the last 2 years. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a kind of a so-called mini rebuild, or at least a position where they aren't good enough to make it all the way, but not bad enough to not make the playoffs. So they're kind of stuck in that
a limbo
kind of thing, like kind of always what the Bengals were with Andy Dalton and AJ Green.
Hey, don't diss on my boy Andy Dalton.
Nah, not the Rocket.
The red not the red.
But for the Patriots, you just gotta be excited. You are able to get 2 wide receivers with Romeo Dobbs and of course AJ Brown to completely re-able this entire offense, especially now with Drake May, who's going into year 3 after being, runner-up in MVP. So, or I guess year 4. But regardless, this is an incredible trade for both teams, incredible value that both teams were able to get out of AJ Brown.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan for both teams. We'll see how that goes. But speaking of a major plan, Josh, we got arguably the biggest trade of the entire year. Arguably, I would say the biggest trade, bigger than Micah. I don't know, since Micah Parsons, in my opinion, but kind of the same caliber. And that is the Los Angeles Rams just saying, screw them picks, man. We're going to get the best player in the entire league, guy who broke the sack record in acquiring Miles Garrett. Trade details, I think it was Jared Verse.
Yep. So the Browns received Jared Verse. They also received a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, a 2029 third-round pick that has potential to become a first if there's a situation where Miles Garrett does go back to the AFC North.
Whew. Yeah. I mean, certainly I think I'll play devil's advocate for a second. Everyone kind of walked out of this trade saying, holy crap, the Browns got fleeced. Right? It sucks. It's like you're tipping your cap, you're waving your cap to a legend, and that's a terrible thing, right? Miles Garrett was probably one of the best players in franchise history for the Cleveland Browns. Just a fantastic overall player. Generational, I can't really say a lot of, I could keep going on and glazing him as much as I can. But for the Browns, right? in my opinion, as much as it sucks, it's the right thing to do because Miles Garrett does not fit the timeline of this team, right?
Mhm.
You really started the rebuild last year when you traded and got extra first round pick for Travis Hunter, and you're acquiring a ton of draft capital. You do the same thing here. You get a 2027 first, which is arguably one of the better draft classes, and also a great draft class for quarterbacks, in case Shooter Sanders doesn't work out, or Deshaun Watson.
Dylan Gabriel, Taylor Green.
Yeah, you got Taylor Green, you got Dylan Gabriel, but you have a really stacked draft class, and you're able to add another first-round pick of that, and then you also get a second and a third. But then on top of it, that might not look like that much, but then you get Jared Verse, and Jared Verse is a fantastic player. He was one of the heart and souls of that entire Rams defense that was competing year in and year out and was one of the best defensive line units in the entire league. You get younger. He's on a rookie contract. I think he's got 2 more years left on his rookie deal.
He just finished his second year in the league.
Just finished his second year, and he's a really good, valuable replacement for them. Former Cleveland native. Now you might be saying, well, Jared Verse just got shipped to hell, right?
Yeah.
He escaped the trenches of Cleveland and went back, but
he goes there and steals Dylan Gabriel's number immediately.
Steals Dylan Gabriel's number. So now I think the important thing is that, right, your timeline is now aligning with what you're going to do. You get off of that massive Miles Garrett contract. You free up a ton of cap space. You get a Pro Bowl caliber, possibly future All-Pro caliber pass rusher in Jared Verse, who, is definitely not Miles Garrett, but he's, as replacements go, he's a lot better than other options. I think, a lot of teams would agree with that. But also you get a lot of draft capital. You continue to get draft capital. I think it's a really solid move for the Browns in their position. Yes, it's a hard trade to get away, but I think you get a really good edge replacement. You get draft capital. I think it's a good thing. And I know I say it a lot with teams' timelines. The Browns are not going to be winning playoff games next year, in my opinion, probably to a lot of other people's opinion. But I don't think, 2 or 3 years down the line, when you get a couple draft classes in, you build up enough where you're saying, hey, we got a lot of young talent. We got cap space to move around. We can get another franchise quarterback, and if that needs to happen. I like it for the Browns, but then obviously for the Rams, it's straightforward. You get Miles Garrett, right? It's very hard to find a replacement for Jared Verse, right? You look at that defensive line. Well, Miles Garrett's a great replacement. Yeah. I'd say, hey, give me Miles Garrett. I'll take that. And again, you talk about timeline fits. He fits their timeline. Stafford's an old quarterback. They're spending all this money, right? Their Super Bowl window is closing because once Stafford goes, it's the Ty Simpson era, and you have no clue how that's going to go. Why not get the best player in the entire world, stack him up on the other side of the ball? You get first time ever MVP and defensive player of the year are on the same roster,
as well as the receptions leader in Puka and the
touchdown leader,
Davante Adams.
So it fits up. You get the basically the best players in the world, but they're all aging. And yes, it's a lot of money. It's a $40 million cap hit, But I mean, you look at this roster, the reshaping of this roster. You basically have one of the better secondaries, and now you have the best defensive line in the entire. It was very hard to say, hey, how are you going to replicate the best edge rushing duo in the league of Daniel Hunter and Will Anderson? Well, you get Miles Garrett and Byron Young.
As well as that interior in Kobe Turner and Brandon Fisk, who both have shown flat. I mean, Brandon Fisk as a rookie had double-digit sacks. Kobe Turner is one of the best interior pass rushers. And you throw in a player like Puna Ford, who's one of the best run-stopping defensive or nose tackles. There's so much talent and depth. I mean, Josiah Stewart, who they drafted a few years ago.
That's right.
Michigan was a 3rd-round pick. But just to throw kind of more stuff about it, as well as you look at this Browns team, and especially the Miles Garrett situation over the last 2 years. This is a guy that was he requested a trade 2 years ago. People kind of forget about this, about the offseason. He won a new contract. He kind of went out of there, got this brand new contract, was the highest paid defensive lineman. And then this year, again, another situation where he requests a trade. He didn't show up at all to OTAs. And then there you go. He gets his answer and he goes to already arguably the best team in the NFC. And I think they were already the highest. They had the highest percentage of winning the Super Bowl already at 8%. Right. And now it's jumped up to 16% in the entire league.
That's actually insane. To think about 16%. Oh my God.
There's 32 teams in the league. That's insane. But you do get a player back in Jared Verse, who Jared Verse is just finished his second year, so he has that third and fourth year of his rookie contract plus that fifth year option. Jared Verse is a player that his stats don't always necessarily show up in the stat sheet.
Mhm.
Do you know how many sacks he has in his career, if you had a guess?
I don't know.
Throw out a random number. Think of a premier edge rusher.
120 of his entire career. Wait.
No, like his last 2 years in the league.
Oh,
Jared Verse.
I'd probably say, I think it's like 15.
Yeah, he has 12.
Yeah, because he had a lot. He didn't have a lot this year.
Exactly. So he had 12 sacks in his entire career. Miles Garrett doubled that last year in 1 year. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of difference in impact. I mean, I can't tell you how many times the Browns were even in games because of Miles Garrett.
Yes. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
So
they single-handedly won like 3, or were close to winning 3 games. Like when he had that 5.
Yeah. I mean, how many times were the entire game plan just to triple to even quadruple team Miles Garrett? And
like every single game.
And let Alex Wright beat you 1-1.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, there's a clear path for both these teams. The Rams know their timeline with Matthew Stafford. They had him on contract for 1 year previously, and they gave him 2 more years for extension. Take away the Ty Simpson trade, that's just a wash for right now. He obviously probably not going to play. But you look at it, and you have 3 years left of your MVP quarterback. Why not go and get the best defensive player in the league and just stack up as much as you can for right now? And that's what they did. You look at this Browns team, they are multiple pieces away, as well as even a head coach that I'm not sure is going to be there longer than a year or 2.
Wow.
Honestly.
Okay.
So you look at this team as a whole. I mean, there's so many players that aren't probably not going to be there for the long-term rebuild, to be fully honest. So you bring in a guy like Miles Garrett is not that one player away. So they go and they get draft capital in a really good upcoming draft class with just about every position, as well as a edge rusher that you control his destiny for the next up to 3 years. So I think it's a situation where you get the most value from the player. And I think this is another situation where it's a win on both sides.
Yeah, I think it is a win on both sides. It's really straightforward. Yeah. But man, it sucks to be in the NFC this year. It really does. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a rough. Well, and I will say this. I will say, arguably, the real losers of this are the NFC, specifically the NFC West.
Yeah, I'm looking at Carson Beck right now.
Carson Beck. I'm looking at Sam. I'm looking at the former Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah,
and the Niners. Because I mean, you look at this Rams team. There's great players all over the board. It's going to be one of the hardest things to do to win the division for probably the next 2 to 3 years. Now, obviously, the question is with the Rams is right. It's basically the Cowboys with. It was Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott.
Right.
Now it's Trent McDuffie. You're paying $30 million a year to. He's the highest paid corner. Miles Garrett, $40 million, and Matthew Stafford, $60 million.
Yep.
And this is something we would probably talk about 2 years down the line or maybe even a year. Puka needs to be extended. He'll be the highest paid receiver in the league. Probably. Yep. Top 3. Your entire defensive line other than Miles Garrett. Byron Young, Brandon Fisk, Kobe Turner needs to be extended.
All on their just about last year's their contracts.
A lot of key pieces of your offensive line will likely need to be extended. Even players in your secondary like Cameron Kitchens.
Yep.
So the question I have, at least with the Rams and Les Snead is, right, are you gonna, right? Because one of the things about this Rams team is they don't have a lot of holes on the roster. But you're stacking up all these, you're saying, we don't have any holes on the roster, so let's just make those players even better than what we actually had. But is that going to end up turning this roster into the thing that, obviously a lot of teams don't want, kind of like the Browns, but I'm not saying the Rams are going to beat the Browns, listen, we have 5 of the best players in the entire league, and then everyone else is mediocre to below average nobodies.
Yeah, I mean, this is another issue I have with the Rams right now is their roster from top to bottom, as you're saying, it's incredible. I mean, you make 2 separate big-time trades with Trent McDuffie and Miles Garrett, just to name 2 top players. You look back at this draft class, obviously it's, 2020 right now, but Ty Simpson, Max Clare, I mean, these are
2 tight ends with 2 second-round picks back-to-back here.
These are players that are not going to have much impact. And you look at this team and you might be saying to yourself, oh, but where would any of these rookies play? Your wide receiver 3 right now is Jordan Whittington. Your backup linebacker is Omar Spites. You have guys there that aren't necessarily
I don't.
aren't
Yeah.
necessarily average starters or below average. So you could really be able to, if you were able to go back, I mean, there's a perfect opportunity for you to get someone like Malachi Lemon come in and play that third wide receiver, slot position instead of that Ty Simpson pick. There's a lot of opportunities that I believe that they missed because their timeline was unsure because in the draft they're looking for the future, and now, of course, with the Miles Garrett trade, they're banking on right now. So there was a big situation where there was some miscommunication between the front office of what the team's going to look like, not only right now, but within the next 3 years.
Yeah. But I will say, man, win-win.
Yep, for sure.
Sorry, Jared Verse. Congratulations, Miles Garrett. But I do like what the Browns are doing, even though sometimes it does look a little absurd. And that Deshaun Watson stain on Andrew Berry is not going away anytime soon.
No, it might never go away, considering he's also getting paid so much money.
So much money.
I think it's $45 million.
Yeah, fully guaranteed contracts are a good idea, man, and massage parlors too. But anyways, now that we have...
I can give you 28 reasons why it's not.
Oh my God, Deshaun Watson, why did you have to do this to Cleveland? All right, anyways, we got the AFC North to talk about, buddy. I don't know if you want to start with a team or if you want me to start with a team.
Sure, yeah. I can, since we kind of been on this talk of Miles Garrett in the trade, I can kind of look into the Browns, the rest of their offseason moves, as well as their draft. So the Browns this year, obviously, one of the biggest things is they went and got Todd Monken as a new head coach, former offense coordinator for the Ravens. This is a guy that's he's an older coach as well as an old school system, especially the way that he runs practice, he expects from his teams. Is that necessarily a bad thing? No, but we're getting to the new era of trying to get younger, trying to find the next youngest innovative coach, and the Browns, especially if they are trending towards a rebuild, went in the opposite direction.
Well, and I think the biggest issue was
exactly it's their process this year.
Well, it was their coaching process. They lost out on so many competitors for that position, but they also lost Jim Schwartz, arguably the best defensive coordinator in the entire league,
and probably one of the main reasons why someone like Miles Garrett finally forced himself out of there.
Yes.
But yeah, so this is another situation where I disagree with their hiring because of the outside perspective of their timeline. Now, of course, if you look inside of each team, if you are part of their front office, you're thinking every team has a chance to make it to the Super Bowl. That's just human nature. But as an outside fan perspective, we all know this Browns team is not close. So getting a new head coach that does not have the correct timeline as that full rebuild, to me, is already a big whiff. Now, you get to their free agents. They obviously had a big need as their offensive line. I think 4 out of their 5 starters were free agents this year. I think it was 7 out of their 9 that even played this year were free agents, and some of them still haven't been signed yet. So they did go out and they grabbed Zion Johnson, left guard for the Chargers. In total, it's about 3 years, $50 million. This is, it's a lot of money for a left guard, first and foremost. Zion Johnson is a little bit younger. He will be about 26 when the season starts.
Yeah.
He is a really strong run blocker. His issue, and you can blame this on the talent around him, especially this past year, he was terrible in pass protection. So I
think we saw that a lot. Yeah,
you're really banking on the potential there. You saw the mentality and with that run protection or that run game, so you're really hoping that can translate into a new system. It's a lot of money for a guard, first and foremost. Then they go and they grab another center, guard, potentially even tackle, Elton Jenkins. About 2 years, $24 million. He is 30. This is another situation where you can say this as well as Elton Jenkins kind of played the worst at that center position.
Yes.
Throughout his career. He's a guy that's been able to play all 5 positions, and $12 million on average to a center that's probably just about average. He's also dealt with some injury concerns. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 2-time Pro Bowler at guard, was really solid. Green Bay put him at center, was not good. And then also got hurt, was out for the entire season. So he's now finally coming back into that position. Yeah.
Exactly. They also made a trade this offseason and get Titus Howard from the Texans. This is a guy that's been able to play both guard and tackle. I think he's probably going to be projected as their right tackle this past year. They paid him a lot of money.
Well, and the thing is, he played his best football as a right guard.
At right guard, exactly, this past year.
Yeah.
So he was the guy that it was kind of the exact opposite of Zion Johnson. Was not great in the run game, but pass protection, he was fantastic. And he showed his best contract year as right guard. And now they went and trade him to give him, I think was it 25 million?
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot
It was
of
a
money.
lot. It was definitely up there. It might have even been, yeah, it was
Mm.
somewhere up there to go and play right tackle. Just another situation of the Browns having to throw money at players that aren't necessarily worth all that amount of money. After those 3 offensive linemen, they replace Devin Bush Jr. with Quincy Williams. Quincy Williams, 2 years, $13 million. Former All-Pro, second-team All-Pro
I like the
linebacker.
contract. Yeah,
It's a good contract. Quincy Williams obviously had a down year this past year with the Jets. He is about that 30-year-old range, but he should be able to really come in and play really well next to Carson Swearinger.
Schlesinger, yeah.
Yep. Especially with JOK being out for this, might be for the rest of his career. So that's such a shame. But Quincy Williams is that JOK type. He's a guy that's really good in the pass protection, a little bit smaller. He can line up really well with slot receivers, tight ends, and running backs. So for that, it's a really good contract. So that's kind of it with their free agents. They did go and they did re-sign Telvin Jenkins. He's another guard. He can fight for that right guard spot day one. Just another guy that's kind of a little bit of a depth piece. Now, with their free agents, they also had a lot of selections in the upcoming draft. They had 2 first-round picks, one from the Jaguars, of course, and they did a lot with all their draft picks. At number 9, they went with the first offensive tackle in the draft, and Spencer Fano from Utah. He's going to be their projected left tackle. Athletic ability is 1,000% there. I think I still would have preferred someone like Francis Mauiaga to be that left tackle. But regardless, this is your high potential, super athletic left tackle for the future. Second first-round pick, they went and got, arguably, this could be their wide receiver 1 for the upcoming future, in Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. This is a fantastic guy. He, to me, is very similar to what they already have in Jerry Jeudy, a guy that has had some concentration drops in his career, but he is someone that's able to really get himself open in just about every route possible. They're able to make some of those big contested catches, but there's a lot. I think he ended up having like a 16% drop rate this past year, which is extremely high, especially for a first-round wide receiver. Most of those were concentration drops, so he's able to really hone in there. This could be a fantastic player. Their first pick in the second round was Denzel Boston. This is kind of the exact opposite of Casey Concepcion. This is your bigger body, kind of contested catch. He reminds me a lot of Amari Cooper, who also played for the Browns. So he's going to be your big X receiver with Casey Concepcion and Jerry Jeudy playing that Z and Y. I do like it. It adds a different dynamic to your offense. And then their other second round pick, they're able to go and get Emmanuel McNeil Warren.
Steal.
We thought, I think during this draft process, I had mentioned that these top 3 safeties in this draft class were some of the best I've seen. Emmanuel McNeil Warren is that big box safety. He should be able to come in. I think he's going to be playing mostly slot to start off, being close to line of scrimmage. He's fantastic. Obviously, the biggest thing about him was he's from Toledo, but we've seen, Quinion Mitchell for the Eagles, outstanding corner from Toledo. So it's not necessarily as big as a knock on him as previous years.
Yeah.
Other than that, I do want to talk briefly about a later round pick. They did go and select Taylor Green, quarterback from Arkansas. I don't expect Taylor Green to be any sort of long-term starter.
You never know.
I do like the idea that they are doing their best to add more talent to this quarterback room. Obviously, you don't necessarily have your day 1 starter right now, or at least it hasn't been announced who your day 1 starters is. There's a fight between Shadir Sanders and Deshaun Watson. Taylor Green does remind me a lot of DTR previously that the Browns drafted. I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor Green ends up playing in the, I don't know, what is it, the UFL Spring Football League. But he's a very fun prospect to watch. Fantastic runner. So yeah, Browns really would make a lot of picks. They obviously came in with significant holes in their offensive line and wide receiver. Those are the 2 biggest needs, and they were able to find replacements. They spent a lot of money in free agency and trading to get the offensive lineman, Tyus Howard, Zion Johnson, Elgin Taylor, as well as go and get wide receivers that you desperately need, drafting 2 in their top 3 picks, top 40 picks overall. So they definitely improved. I just don't know if that improvement is going to be super successful in this upcoming year.
Yeah, I mean, it's anything with the Browns are just trying to get younger,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to get younger all over the place. I really do like what they did. obviously especially with the Browns, one of their biggest needs was, and especially overboard, was offensive line and receiver. And you went and attacked that full bore.
Yep.
Yeah, I do think a lot of these guys are some pretty big overpays. Zion Johnson to me is a really scary contract, but I think he's a rock solid guy. Elton Jenkins, a lot of money. Titus Howard, but these guys are a little more veteran. They've been able to play, pretty well over the course of we're all second round picks.
Yeah.
Get bodies in there, because I don't want Cornelius Lucas starting as my left tackle.
Or Cam Robinson as well.
Or Cam Robinson, right? You need bodies across the offensive line. They attack that ferociously. And then the same thing with receiver room, right? Yeah. You get two different styles of players, but both have been really consistent. Both were supposed to be kind of late, early second round picks. Late first, early second round picks. You got them right there where you wanted them. Yeah, the biggest questions I have is, one, how is this team going to respond on defense to losing Miles Garrett and losing Jim Schwartz? Because they do have talent. You have the defensive rookie of the year. You made a really solid trade, I think, last year with Tyson Campbell, who's been a really good player. Right? You bring in Jared Verse. He's not Miles Garrett, but sacked production might not be there 100%, but he's a game wrecker. He's a game wrecker. That's what you want from a player like him. So that's the question. Then the obvious question on the other side of the ball is your quarterback room, your quarterback situation. It's a mess. Dylan Gabriel, Taylor Green, Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson. In my opinion, I think it's going to be the same thing as it was. Deshaun Watson is probably going to start the season because, hey, we paid you this much money. Yeah. We're expecting you to have some kind of production. And yes, he tore his Achilles, and obviously he's had a long time to come back from that. But listen, we're giving you this amount of money, right? You better kind of show something from us. I know he's been performing probably the best out of all the quarterbacks in the OTA situation.
Yeah. There's no physical contact. They are strictly just in pads, or not even in pads. They're just in shells. So that's just, they're not full contact.
Yeah.
Really. So it's another whole aspect of, it's hard to determine everything of who's your starting quarterback from those practice reps. That's not real time, not as intense as true practice or true in-game scenarios.
Yeah, and then, you have a Pro Bowl quarterback. You have two Pro Bowl quarterbacks on your roster if you think about it, which is absolutely crazy. Shedeur Sanders, still not buying the hype. Still a lot of questions with him. Just did not have a very good year last year, even though he kind of put a little bit of life in the offense.
It didn't show enough consistency. I know he was obviously a rookie, 5th-round rookie, but there wasn't enough shown last year compared to the poor performance that really excites either of us. I think.
And then Dylan Gabriel was just Max Brosmer. So
left-handed.
Left-handed Max. So the question, I think, is obviously, right, this whole quarterback situation really has to be fixed, and then how the defense is going to respond. So I really like they're bringing in a ton of young talent. They're going to continue to do that. Spencer Fano I like a lot. Just a little undersized for a left tackle. I think there's some questions there. But the question is, can this rookie class kind of replicate what happened last year with the Browns having arguably the best draft we've seen in a pretty long time? So yeah, I think the Browns are moving in the right direction player wise. Not sure about personnel wise. I know you mentioned that.
Yep.
But it's how they're going to. Are you going to make a jump? Are you going to because we've gotten a lot more assets, are you going to make the jump that you need to make the jump?
Exactly. I think every year, especially with these teams that are rebuilding, there is one big kind of question marker, and there's always one big question. It's, do you draft your rookie quarterback first and then build around him afterwards, or do you draft and build around your team and then put a rookie quarterback into that situation? And I think if you're looking for some sort of excitement as a Browns fan, I think it's to come to terms that the idea that Shedeur Sanders is probably not going to be your franchise quarterback. But the positive about it is you are building a good foundation around a rookie quarterback within the next few years with 2 early picks at wide receiver. You got 3, 4. You grabbed 4 offensive linemen and this offseason cycle plus the draft that are all young and that are under contract for a little while. You should be, especially with the young tight end Harold Fannin, you should be excited about the pieces built around. You just have to find the quarterback.
Yes, sir. So. Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Cleveland Browns, let's go. Get on your feet. Speaking of, let's go. And a team that I think should be going places, but wasn't going places last year was the Baltimore Ravens. It's just expectations let down, complete rehaul. Not necessarily complete rehaul, but complete coaching rehaul. John Harbaugh finally gone after 18 years of being the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. Definitely almost it's a Sean McDermott thing, right?
Yep.
You go, you do well, in the playoffs, you absolutely fumble, and I think this was the last straw. Thanks, Tyler Loop, for doing that for us. All respect in the world of the kid, I feel really bad, but still, things need to be changed, right? The Ravens consistently battled injuries due to intense practices, which is actually what we're seeing from the Giants.
With up to 3 full-term season injuries.
Season injuries, yep. And just lack of playoff consistency, lack of really just getting over the AFC hump. So what do? You bring in a really good coaching hire, Jesse Minter, Chargers defensive coordinator. Chargers have had consistently one of the most underrated defenses in the entire NFL. Jesse Minter, again, you talk about young coaching minds coming in. Jesse Minter was one of those premium guys. You bring him in as your defensive guru for a Ravens defense that regressed last year, if I do say so myself.
Yes, especially because the Ravens defensive coordinator the last few years, or last 2 years especially, is a younger guy.
Yeah.
And Zach Orr. And we've seen, especially time and time again, this past season especially, where this defense was poor. You saw a big regression from certain key players, Marlon Humphrey, Roquan Smith especially, and also, of course, you dealt with injuries, Justin Matabuke. And you can even throw in the argument that Kyle Hamilton, for the first few games of the season, looked pretty poor before Aloni Gilman got there.
Well, I think it was their first 5 games, they were number 1 in the most passing yards let up. We talked about, I remember we talked about it.
They were breaking records that you don't want to touch when it comes to total yards.
Yeah. I think it was an overall regression, even on the offensive side with Lamar Jackson struggling a decent amount. So, right, you go to this offseason, you have a new coach, your cap space is a little tight, right? You went some extensions. You made some interesting moves. Definitely a very interesting offseason. First, start off with the Max Crosby fiasco. Definitely a little rough for the Ravens, but at the same time, you were able to manage to keep 2 first-round picks from them, and you got your replacement. I'll go with some of the smaller ones. Chidobe Awuzie, bring him in, solid veteran corner. Jalen Hawkins is a signing I actually really like from the Patriots. He was a really good Patriot safety.
Yeah, he was.
You got him for $5 million a year to replace Alohi Gilman.
Who ended up being more than that for the Chiefs. And Jalen Hawkins was a player that had 4 interceptions plus a few sacks as well. He's a very dynamic style piece that they have now.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it's a rock solid replacement with upside. Offensive, and then another big issue, the interior offensive line. We cannot have any more Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees on our offensive line. So they bring in former Baltimore Raven John Simpson on a 3-year, $30 million deal. Going back to familiar territory in Baltimore, an average guard, I would say.
He
average.
Did play well for the Jets last year, but you look at his entire career, and it's a lot of mediocrity, as well as the fact that he is at that age. He's over 30 years old, which, for a lot of people might not sound crazy, but for a football player that's been spending half their entire lifetime playing football, that is a lot of snaps, a lot of hits, a lot of long-term issues for anybody. So
but it is certainly an upgrade over what they had, because yikes, that was not great.
We could have been out there as their left and right guard, and
give us a shot, man. Give us a couple contracts, we'll make it happen. And then finally, the biggest one out of all of them, and one of the biggest free agent signings of the entire season, Trey Hendrickson going to his rival. 4 years, $112 million for the Cat, $60 million guaranteed. Yeah, this is your Draymond Jones replacement. It is an upgrade. Certainly, Trey Hendrickson has been, in my opinion, one of the most underrated pass rushers for the past 5 years. He really got on with the Bengals after a rookie stint with the Saints.
As a former 3rd-round pick.
And Baltimore desperately needs pass rush. As you said, Nnamdi Madubuike out. Mike Green didn't necessarily have the season we wanted to. You're looking to contend. You're looking to complete while you're still in Lamar Jackson's prime. Get the best pass rusher on the board. He's older, definitely older. I think he's pushing 30, if not 30 already.
I think he's about 30 now.
Had some surgery last year. I don't know if it was surgery or what, or if he just hated the Bengals organization.
it could have been a lot of players end up having surgery in the offseason. It's just to clean up, scar tissue in the knee, or just to clean up some lingering effects from a post-injury.
But it's definitely a risky contract. You're getting him for a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's something that you need to do. It's something that you need to do in order to compete while you're still in Lamar Jackson's prime. You're hoping that he can continue being that Cincinnati Bengals guy, be that enforcer on the defensive line, and also help the rookies out, who I also will talk about in a second when you come with their draft guys. So overall, definitely some upgrades at positions. Did they do a lot? No. Did they get some players that desperately they needed to help to compete? Yes, I do think so.
And,
so
yeah, and I'm going to throw this point at you. Obviously, there was the whole fiasco of, Max Crosby. Got traded, and then he moved over there, and then he failed a physical and was sent back. Ravens were able to keep their picks, and then immediately turn around and get a guy that's not going to say similar play style, but a guy that's able to impact the game closely in the
very similar way,
right, in the pass protection.
And you're able to keep your first round picks as well.
Exactly. Now, I'm not saying that they're the same player. Trey Hendrickson is far and away a lot worse when it comes to the run game than Max Crosby.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Trey Hendrickson, as one of the higher end pass rushers of the game, he is arguably one of the worst run game defenders. And that's a whole part of his game. Is there were so many times for the Bengals where they were purposely trying to get him away from the run game as much as possible. They were obviously in a standard pass game, they were trying to find matchups for him where he can really succeed. And then for the run game, they were doing their best to move him out of the way. So because he was not making almost any impact for the running back.
Right. Yeah.
It's a whole situation there. So I don't necessarily know. Here's the thing. Trey Hendrickson and Draymond Jones. Trey Hendrickson is a much better player right now his whole career. When it comes to a run game, that's a downgrade. Draymond Jones is so much better for them. So
it did have some run game issues last year, especially on the defense. But
exactly.
I do agree. I think they're gonna, but again, it comes down. They like to run really big defensive tackles, and I think I think they're really banking on Jesse Minter kind of saying, "Hey, how are we going to recoup this? How are we going to build this team?" Because he loves how he plays his defensive tackles, and the Ravens got some big guys.
I mean, they finally John Jenkins. I mean, you have to love this guy. This is a 10-year veteran that never had a second contract with any team. Finally got a second contract.
Yeah,
as a big D tackle, as well as Travis Jones, who's an underrated D tackle from UConn from a couple years ago. He also led the team in sacks. So those are two big D tackles. It doesn't include Nami Matabuke, who there's a lot of questions with his injury, dealt with a neck injury last year. But regardless, you're really banking on similar players, but a whole different coaching style in Jesse Minter.
Yes. Yeah, I think, but defensive schemes, yes, extremely important. I like I like the offseason. I think it's not a premium, but it's also a really good, just overall kind of boost and upgrade. You also bring in Declan Doyle, the Chicago Bears offensive coordinator, or Chicago Bears assistant. Hopefully, you can bring over Ben Johnson. Right, you're getting new. You're trying to get fresh start. Right, smell the flowers again. Let's get it going. I wish Green Bay did that, but maybe I don't know, but. So we'll talk about the draft. I like their draft. I like what they did. We'll start with their, addressing the trenches with their first two picks. Vega Ioane, I mean, this is,
to me,
one of the, we talk about safe picks. Yeah. I think this is a safe pick. I think, the Baltimore didn't overthink it. The interesting thing, I think the really interesting thing is should you have taken Ruben Bain over Vega Ioane? But I think I think this is, again, an absolute need for the Baltimore Ravens, right? John Sims, bringing in John Simpson is not going to fix your interior offensive line.
Especially, we didn't even talk about, especially losing Tyler Linderbaum.
Yes.
Starting center. So already, if you just look, you take away the rookies, this offensive line is worse than it was last year. And it was already one of the worst groups as a unit. So bringing someone like Vega Ioane is incredible value.
Yeah, I mean, arguably the best guard in the entire, probably the best guard in the entire draft, arguably the best offensive lineman in the entire draft. I like the pick. I think this guy could be, without injuries, a 10-plus year starter for the Baltimore Ravens. Kind of that, really premium guy. Could be Marshall Yanda. You never know. Second round pick. I know this is a guy you really like. That's Zion Young.
Yep.
from Missouri, second year in a row where they take a pass rusher in the second round. How about that?
It was dealt with some off the field issues as well.
Dealt with off the field issues, but is known for his explosiveness, tenacity, pass rushing presence and premium.
Yeah, and as well as just that, as you said, that physicality and that mentality. Obviously, you don't necessarily want a player that's dealing with off the field issues, but if you are able to get a mean SOB, especially at a defensive end, to bring in that that mentality, especially with him and Mike Green, that's two really young, high potential edge rushers that you now have.
Yeah. And it's someone that Trey Hendrickson can also mentor and teach along the way. So
Exactly.
we've talked about this before, just adding as many bodies as you can to your pass rush arsenal. And Jesse Minter likes to do that a lot too. I guess the only picks I really say that I found interesting left, they brought in 2 receivers with their next 2 picks. Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt from Indiana. I like both these guys. They're both more contested catch guys, which honestly the Ravens have not really had.
I mean, they've rotated. They've used players, for example, like DeAndre Hopkins. They've always kind of rotated.
Not Texans DeAndre Hopkins. It's
No.
this is Baltimore Ravens DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, so they tend to rotate with their big possession catch. They use a lot of, in the past, Mark Andrews has kind of been that player. So they've been able to get 2 bigger body receivers in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, so and adding weapons for Lamar Jackson, Rashad Bateman, I would not say has worked out the best. Zay Flowers is a really good player, but he doesn't provide that contested catch fit. So overall, I like what the Ravens did in the draft. They got some depth pieces towards the end of the draft. I know they drafted 2 tight ends, but
which is fair. You lost both, Charlie Kolar and Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews is already past, his so-called prime, when we kind of seen situations last year where it was pretty clear that he might be on his way out within the next few years.
Yeah, I think that the biggest questions I look at with this team is, one, Lamar Jackson has to take that step back into where he was. He was not the same player he was. And maybe that was because he was scrambling for his life with his interior offensive line. But he has to take that step back, right? The Ravens are trying to give him pieces. They're adding extra weapons for him, right? You still have Derrick Henry in that backfield. Can Lamar Jackson take that step up? The other thing is the same thing with the defense, man. A lot of regression on all sides of the ball. Can those guys get back to where they are? Or is this a team that already passed its prime that's just trying to scrape the pieces together and desperately go back into it? The only thing I'd say is time is running out. You look at some of their best players on the offensive and defensive side. They are older prospects. Ronnie Stately, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, defensive side, Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, I'll even throw this idea at you. So is Lamar Jackson. Drafted in 2018.
Yeah, that's actually crazy, man. Wow.
So the fact is, he's getting up there in age, and you look at, obviously he's a fantastic player, but his play style is not necessarily
for longevity.
Exactly, especially taking off as much. He's in the past taken some big hits. So it's another big issue there of how many more years of his prime, and you just have to hope that last year was a complete wash when it comes to the inaccuracy that he dealt with, as well as the players around him.
Yes. It's actually really funny to think about. I remember our legend Hayden Hurst was drafted before him. That's crazy. But yeah, I think there's a lot to look at. I think the Ravens still have some really good players on paper. I do like what they did in the offseason, addressing the trenches, getting some extra depth in certain places. They did and I like the coaching hires. I like the personnel hires. But the question is especially in a division where competition's going to be really tight, I'd probably say all 4 teams got better. Yep. Are they going to maintain what they've been doing? Or are they going to get back where they were probably 2 years ago, get over that hump, and really make a shot for the AFC once again? And can Jesse Minter provide that boost, if they make the playoffs, where they can go and say, hey, we're going to finally get over that playoff drought hump?
No, exactly. And especially, as you said, in such a competitive division, you have, realistically, there's 3 teams on the division that are playing for that true playoff spot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, man. Baltimore. I always wanted to visit, get some good Old Bay. But speaking of a place that I have visited, in your next team, we got my favorite quarterbacks all time, last dance.
The
The Pittsburgh Steelers, baby.
yeah, I mean, as you said, the last dance. This is like the last tour, for example, for Aaron Rodgers here at the Steelers. This is a team, before I even get into their acquisitions, this is a team that timeline, everything, they have to win right now or everything's messed up. I mean, obviously, I think that one of the biggest, key stories of this was Mike Tomlin finally stepping down after like 18 years or
Yep.
something crazy like that.
18 years of 9-8.
Yeah. They go and get Mike McCarthy, who I think you as well can say is not necessarily an upgrade.
Yep. I'd say he's more of a downgrade. I think we talk about it, or I wouldn't say we talk about it, but I know from experience of looking at just rosters, this is a direct move to please Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, 100%. You go and you get, a guy that has a true connection with them and you try to bring him back. Because that was the other big story was Aaron Rodgers wasn't necessarily responding to the Steelers trying to get him to come back. No one really knew if he was going to retire this offseason or sign up with a different team. There was interest from other teams as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Aaron Rodgers does finally come back 1 year, $22.5 million. They were also I will say they did make some good offseason acquisitions. Their biggest one, contract-wise, Jermel Dean, corner, 3 years, 36, almost $37 million. He's a little bit older, but for the Buccaneers last year, he was their brightest spot.
Yes.
He by far had his best career year. He comes in and he doesn't also have to be a corner one. He can play, corner two behind Joey Porter, let Jalen Ramsey be that kind of slot. But Jermel Dean's an incredible player. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, you do lose Kenneth Gainwell in this offseason cycle. He's a guy that had over 1,000 total scrimmage yards, was one of the best. I like to prefer him as like a scat back.
Yep.
A guy that can play both running back and receiver.
Well, better receiving backs.
Yeah, exactly. So they do try to replace some of that value in production with Rico Dowdle, 2 years, about $12 million. Rico Dowdle is a player that showed some of the highest highs of this past season, but also some of the lowest lows for the Panthers.
Yes.
So
yes,
if he's able to kind of come in and be that secondary running back to Jalen Warren, he can kind of come in and be able to add some value. They go and get Sebastian Joseph Day, another interior D lineman, to kind of rotate between, Cam Hayward and as well as some other players. I do like probably my favorite signing, that is Jawan Brisker, 1 year, only $5 million from the Bears this past offseason. He is one of those players that if can stay healthy and stay on the field, he is fantastic.
Yes.
This also allows players, for example, like Jalen Ramsey, come more down into the box, play more closer to the line of scrimmage, kind of keep them away from that far coverage. So I love those picks. They definitely were able to get a lot of talent. And again, that one kind of last little run from these free agents.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best offseason, maybe not because it's like the Titans or the Raiders where they spent so much money, they got all these players, but really good value for really cheap contracts.
They got some of the best. I mean, Jermel Dean was probably, the most underrated corner, but probably a top 5 corner this past year. And they're getting him for, 3 year. It was right around $10 million a year. So
yeah, that's really good.
Right around $12 million. So that's fantastic. Especially now we're getting, corners that are getting closer to that 25 and plus. So the fact they're able to get a lot of talent there, Rico Dowdle still has a lot of untapped potential, I think, especially in a better organized team than, for example, the Panthers with their running back situation. The Panthers relied on him as much as they can, but also they realize that they just signed Chuba Hubbard and they have Jonathan Brooks on the back end that they don't want to put all their money into Rico Dowdle. So a lot of situations there. But their draft, I also really do like. This is kind of the standard. I feel like this is the standard Steelers draft. First round pick, Max Ioannidis, offensive tackle from Arizona State. This is a guy that has a lot of potential. I could definitely see a situation where he comes in and he beats out Broderick Jones to be their right tackle. Also see a situation where he does not play at all. So it's a whole kind of situation where it's a lot of potential. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does end up being that long-term starter. But this is a guy that also has only played for a few years, truly, and was one of the best offensive tackles last year.
Yes.
So I love that pick. Second round, you go and get another wide receiver, Jermaine Bernard from Alabama. Obviously, they made the trade for
Michael Pittman
this offseason. They have DK Metcalf. So you get a guy that's very different than those two big body receivers. This is your slot guy. I love it. Jermaine Bernard, to me, is his body type, the way he plays, it's very similar to Deebo Samuel, kind of those running
Yeah.
backs, where if you're able to get the ball in his hands, he's able to do a lot with it. Third round pick, Drew Allar from
No, it
yeah,
is. It's official. It's George Pickens for Drew Aller.
yeah. So I'll point two little spots to this. I dislike this not because you're bringing in a young quarterback, but his play style, his size, it's very similar to what they already had in Will Howard, their fifth round pick from last year, as well as all the reports coming out. There's a lot of they're having to reteach him everything.
Yeah.
Comes to fundamentals, everything of that nature. Plus, there's been some talks about his off the field issues, especially, text messages, things like that.
You guys have probably seen most of that.
We won't get into that. But I do really like some of their other picks. Ginnings Dunker, offensive lineman from Iowa. Love this pick. This is a guy who I don't necessarily know if he's going to be the starter based on the Steelers' offensive line. He could end up becoming what Isaac Samala was at left guard. I love him. He's that old style, big physical mauler offensive lineman. Love this pick. As well as one pick I want to mention, and that's Kaden Wedgen, wide receiver / strictly special teams, punt and kick returner. He was one of the best, in the country last year. Only issue is you're spending a fourth round pick on a guy that's strictly just special teams. And it's
if he's Devin Hester, that's a great pick. But
exactly. But if you really look at it, there's very few, punt and kick returners that have gone so early that have really been able to exceed, or at least to the expectations. So regardless of that one pick, I do really like this draft. It's again, I think the Steelers always do this, is they go with the trenches almost always as their first pick. So I do really like how they're able to get some more depth, especially Jermaine Bernard should be able to get a lot of, catches early on. Dalen Everett's another corner I kind of mentioned, but you double it up with Max Anarcher and Ginnings Dunker, both two offensive linemen that might not be day one starters, but should get plenty of playing time, not only this year, but within the next 2 to 3 years. So I do really like what the Steelers have been able to do.
Yeah, I think it comes down. Yeah, you said it.
Yeah.
You said it best at the start. The Steelers team is in a win now mode. And the question I have is, can you do that with Aaron Rodgers? Because last year you couldn't. They barely scraped into the playoffs. They got bounced, blew out in the wild card round. They did a great job with some of their offseason moves. Is it enough, right?
Yep.
You look at the difference between the Rams and what Pittsburgh has done, right? Pittsburgh has gotten really good value and solid players. Jamel Dean, Michael Pittman, Rico Dowdle, right? This is the difference I'm talking about, right? Is the Rams have a Super Bowl caliber roster. I don't think the Steelers have a Super Bowl caliber roster.
No.
I think they have a wild card caliber roster. This is what we say all the time. And
they have a 9-8 roster.
They have a 9-8 roster, even with their offseason moves. Right? I like the Michael Pittman trade. I think it's really good value. I don't think he's an amazing wide receiver. I think he's a good wide receiver too. I'm not sure about DK Metcalf. I'm not sure about Aaron Rodgers. I don't like to say that because I love Aaron Rodgers. But
the thing is, can you rely on a 43-year-old quarterback?
Yeah, can you rely on a 43-year-old quarterback? Can you rely on Mike McCarthy? This isn't 2010 when Aaron Rodgers is at the top of his world and Mike McCarthy is one of the best coaches of the NFL. This is 16 years. We're talking about 16 years later. The defensively is the same thing. This isn't, I'll say this. We say this about teams. If this was a Steelers roster 5 years ago, this team would win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think the biggest point about this is you look last year, and obviously DK Metcalf was their, wide receiver one. Half the season was Adam Thielen.
Yes.
Adam Thielen and Calvin Austin were their two backup wide receivers, pretty much.
Yeah.
So you are able to at least upgrade with Micah Pittman and Jermaine Bernard, but at the same time, that's still not enough. Michael Pittman is not what, he was his first few years of the coach. This is a guy that's can hardly separate as a wide receiver.
Yeah, I'll say this for Pittsburgh fans just in general, because I like what they did. Yeah. I like the value they got in the draft. Now, the Mekhi Lemon thing stinks, but I think Max Ianachor is a really good tackle replacement in the future because Broderick Jones just has not worked out as a prospect.
And there's still some injury concerns as he's not fully healthy back from.
And Pittsburgh is really good at kind of value, like overall building up offensive linemen for the future, right? Jennings Dunker's a really good pick. Jeremy Bernard. And like I said, really, you talk about the number one team in value in free agent signings, I would probably go with the Pittsburgh Steelers just because of the players that they got and upgraded for the value that they got. But
And I want to interrupt you real fast. I'm going to throw this at you. The reason why is because they have no money.
Yes.
They're still the highest paid defense in the entire league. Now, I'm not sure if that's updated with the Miles Garrett situation trade, but the fact is they have to do these value contracts because they're putting so much money into players that are not able to produce as much. For example,
Yeah.
I mean, TJ Watt at one point was was the best defensive player. There was so many conversations between him and Miles Garrett, but now you look around TJ Watt, his backups and the players around him are getting paid just as much as he is.
Yep.
Nick Herbert just got a huge extension, as well as Alex Highsmith.
That's actually crazy extent.
Yeah. 4 years, $100 million.
Yeah.
And now he's a fantastic player. But Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbert are both taking, at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised, more snaps and are more valuable to the team than TJ Watt is.
To be fair, TJ Watt is older, but yeah, I it's the same thing. Like Jalen Ramsey, the Cameron Hayward's still actually a great player, but
Patrick Queen is another huge example.
This team just it's not only the offseason moves that they made, it's their core roster in general. This is just listen, it almost seems like they're forced to compete.
To me, I'm going to interrupt you. This reminds me of the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Brooklyn Nets.
Yes. That's actually such a great comparison. You are forcing yourself, you've dug yourself in so much of a hole, right? You're forcing yourself to compete. You're clinging on the last bit of hope and saying, hey, right, we don't want to go into that rebuild. We just want one more year.
Yeah.
One more year of doing this. And I'll be honest with you, it hasn't worked for the past 4 or 5 years for what they've done, because they tried the rebuild with Kenny Pickett, kind of. That didn't work out.
Nope.
Right? So they're clinging on to everything, but I think even more so than some of the other teams we talked about is, what are you going to do? This team, to me, is destined for the same exact thing that they've done. And the question is, for me, is, right, is Mike McCarthy a one and done coach? Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. TJ Watt's going to be past like 32. Yeah. Cameron Hayward might retire. What are you going to do, right?
And here's such a big part that I don't understand. Not that I don't understand. I understand the idea that you have one more year of Aaron Rodgers. You put all your money into him, all your resources. You go in and get his best buddy at head coach. You try your best to get, regardless of the age or prime of the player, name value in some of these players to come in and do like one last run. The thing that I hate is, you look at this upcoming draft, this is one of the best quarterback drafts we've seen in years, just from an outside perspective looking in. This is the year that the fact that they're trying one more year with Aaron Rodgers completely negates the fact that they could have so-called tanked the season, especially with Mike Tomlin stepping down. This would have been the perfect opportunity for you to take that 1 year rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Let some of your older contracts, release them, get as much value as you can, and take in that 1 year rebuild with an opportunity of some of the top end quarterbacks. Yeah. Except what they're doing is they're trying one more time with a retirement home on their team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's a single Steelers fan out there that truly thinks that in their heart, that they can make it all the way.
Yeah. Sorry, Steelers fans. Yeah. But yeah, I do agree. I think it's, the way I classify it is good offseason, bad situation.
Yep. 100%. And that, again, it doesn't go to say that they didn't have a fantastic offseason. It's not a situation where they are one piece away.
Yeah.
They are years, mentality, a coach away.
Yikes, Pittsburgh. We got a lot to talk about. We got a lot going on. But for our final team, we'll get this moving on, and that is the Cincinnati Skyline chili-loving Bengals. Man, oh man, they had a actually interesting offseason. This team, Joe Burrow, hurt. Worst defense in the league, worst that I've seen in a long time. You got a lot to go on with, right? You keep Zach Taylor, you keep your coaching staff, and you make a ton of offseason moves. We'll start with their signings. Bring back Joe Flacco. You extend Orlando Brown Jr. So Joe Flacco, I think it's a great signing. Bring him back. He was rock solid for them as a backup quarterback. Kyle Duggar's a backup rotational safety. First big one, Jonathan Allen from the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings cut him loose. The Bengals have had so many, they drafted and tried to develop so many defensive tackles. TJ Slayton, Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson.
Yeah.
I could think of, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Jonathan Allen,
BJ Hill as
BJ Hill, yeah.
years ago. Yeah.
Jonathan Allen, rock solid veteran defensive tackle, past his prime, but still can provide good value as a veteran defensive tackle for your team. Go into the secondary, right? We got a lot of issues with the secondary. Brian Cook, really good value of a contract.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite signings. 3 years, $40 million for, I would say, a really good above average safety for the Kansas City Chiefs for a while.
Yeah, I'm really hoping this is not a Geno Stone situation where, because when Geno Stone got signed from the Baltimore Ravens, I at least said I thought this was a fantastic contract. Geno Stone had one of the best years. He almost led the league in interceptions, and then he comes over and the system's completely different, and he was really poor. So hopefully it's not the same.
Hopefully
situation.
It's not the same, but I like the signing. I like what it has. Well, I like what it has as a replacement for Geno Stone, which was not great. And you add some veteran needs in the secondary that Geno Stone could not replicate. So hopefully that is not the same thing.
Hopefully.
And finally, their biggest one, Boye Mafe, 3 years, $60 million contract. Interesting signing to me. Really athletic, freakishly athletic, just does not have the production. Comes from a winning culture in Seattle. But this is really his chance to be that premier pass rusher. Seattle had a really deep pass rusher rotation across the board, and Boye Mafe now gets the chance to be that premier pass rusher. It is definitely a risk, right, for your team. You're not necessarily paying him as much as guys like Jalen Phillips and Odafe Owe, which I would say are even more of a risk for their situations, but I would say are better players. But for Cincinnati, you just need pass rush rotation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shamar Stewart, you lose Trey Henderson. Shamar Stewart can't be your number one pass rusher as of now.
You lost
Joseph.
Production from Miles Murphy, former first-round pick. I think it was a thing where he had 3 sacks his first 3 years, and then he finished this last season with 4 sacks out of the last 5 games.
Yeah.
So you're banking on that. Obviously losing Trey Hendrickson, so you're trying to get someone that has that potential higher.
Yeah.
Boye Mafe, who wasn't exactly that premier edge number 1, kind of in that depth chart. So you're really hoping on that potential.
A stack experience on the defensive line.
Yeah.
Get athletic, they like athletic players with upside. Boye Mafe definitely has some experience, but just has not been able to be that number 1 pass rusher for a team. But overall, you talk about these free agent signings. I like them, right? You have to add pieces to this defense because, and this is the same thing, right? You're taking risks by bringing in some guys that you're not sure will have the same production or have not had that production in the past, and you're expecting them to take it. But man, anything's better than what you had last year. Address your defensive line, get more bodies in, upgrade in that secondary. But then obviously the biggest move of them all in another massive, we've had some crazy trades this year.
Yeah, we have.
Sexy Dexy going to the Cincinnati Bengals for a first-round pick, the 10th overall pick in the draft. I like this for the Bengals. I think the Bengals were in an extremely difficult spot in the draft where they really wanted to take a pass rusher or one of the top secondary guys, right? You could have taken Caleb Downs in that scenario, but you could have taken
But the thing about it is, prior to the draft, everyone considered both those players in the top 10.
In the top 10. And also you brought in Brian Cook, right? You still have Jordan Battle, who you're kind of banking on.
Dax Hill and DJ.
And again, you talk about this defensive line, right? You lose a premier guy. You gain a premier guy in Dexter Lawrence. And suddenly your defensive tackle room goes from arguably the worst in the league to one of the best with Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen, and some of your young guys in the back going to rotate. Dexter Lawrence is coming off of a down year for his caliber of a player. But this guy's a game wrecker, right?
Yeah. He had, there was a difference. One year we had 10 sacks to half a sack, and one season later, his production goes more than just the box score. He's a guy that allowed someone like Brian Burns to get 17 and a half sacks.
And that's what it's going to be. That's what it's going to be. It's going to free up space for other players. This is the defensive leader you need on your team, because Cincinnati does not have that at the moment, right? So, and again, the 10th overall pick was a really difficult spot, in my opinion, for them to take a guy that they really would like. And they had money to go and get him. So I like the trade. I like what they did. I think Dexter Lawrence is going to be a huge part of this team. And Cincinnati has just been desperately looking to develop that defensive line, and why not get one of the best defensive tackles in football to do that?
Yeah, and I think as well that's going to allow some of your younger linebackers,
Yep.
especially who struggled last year a lot, and Darius Wright and Barrett Carter, to really come out and be able to evaluate their game and be able to because if you have somebody that's so big as Dexter Lawrence, who can take up so much space, take up multiple blockers, that allows your linebackers to be able to act a little more free and be able to
Mhm.
make and run plays that they were truly missing last year.
Yeah, I do agree, but I like it. I like you're addressing basically all your defense because that's what you think is gonna bring you down, and you're gonna try to lift it up. So, when it comes to the draft, right, you don't
Yep.
have a first-round pick. You just gave away the 10th overall pick. Basically, hey, 10th overall pick, we select Dexter Lawrence. I think that's a good top 10 pick to go to in
Yeah.
a weak draft. But the draft, also really interesting. First start with Cassius Howell.
Uh-huh.
Really kind of polarizing prospect for a lot of people. I like it, and I think it's a risk. Definitely comes with a little more pass rush production, right?
Yep.
Has that pass a little different than some of the guys that they picked, where they're saying, "Hey, right, you're a really athletic guy, but you don't have that pass rushing
Yeah,
upside."
he's the exact opposite to Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, pass rushing upside, but it's the physical tangibles that are really concerning, specifically the arm length,
Yep.
right? People were concerned about Ruben Bain's arm, like, well, Cassius Howell had even shorter arms than Ruben
It's
Bain
the smallest arms
ever.
ever recorded in the combine for a defensive end.
So I think Cassius Howell will probably not be your pass rusher number one, but I think for his explosiveness, his pass rushing upside
Yeah.
ability, I think this is a really good rotational young pass rusher to have in your system that complements the athletic upsides of Boye Mafe and Shamar Stewart.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in this situation. Miles Murphy's probably going to end up being one of your starting defensive ends. Probably your strong side. He's a guy that's a lot bigger, a lot more physical, be your run stopping, your rotating. And I think Cassius Howell will be able to come in and take his replacement on those third down, passing plays. So he should be able to add a little more excitement in that defensive end
Yeah.
position because they do have such a rotation of guys. I think his value, at least year one, should be very similar to Joseph Asai as of a few years ago.
Yeah.
Of the last few years. So a guy that can come in, just strictly rush the passer. You shouldn't really expect him to make too many explosive plays. I think he has limitations as a pro, but he should come in and immediately be able to upgrade that room.
Yeah. I think it's again adding more bodies to your pass rushing system. Third round pick. I'll talk about two more guys here kind of quickly. Tacario Davis, adding depth into your corner room, which has to an extent gotten better to where it has been. DJ Turner has been a really good bright spot. Daxton Hill's kind of found his place within the slot. Tacario Davis, big dude.
Yeah,
6'4", really lanky, different, unique guy, right?
Exactly.
DJ Turner, Daxton Hill, undersized corners. He provides that length and that big playability to be stopped. Now, there are some concerns with some of his coverage and your upside, but the body archetype is extremely rare for a corner and adding depth into the secondary, right? So you're addressing defense. And then a pick I'm interested in and I kind of like is, and I'll go, they got a couple guys at the end. I like Jack Endress, the 7th round from Texas. So it'll be a good rotational tight end. The final one I'll really mention is Connor Lew from Auburn, 4-year team captain, really good center. Probably would have went higher if it wasn't for the fact that he tore his ACL and was out all last year. Yeah, I think this is a really good future play for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Ted Karras is not getting any younger. He is an older player, but I really do think that Connor Lew could be a guy who maybe in a year or two could be your future starting center. So I guess for the picks that they had, right, you continue to address defense. In the later rounds, you address offensive depth on the offensive line and receiving cores. I like that for the Bengals. Yeah. I like what they did this offseason. Because listen, you knew how bad their offense was. You have to go address this. They feel comfortable in what they have offensively because they've addressed so much of the offensive line, right? You have the best, if healthy, quarterback receiving trio in the entire league. So the question is two things. One, Joe Burrow needs to have a healthy season. Yeah. People really say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He is. It's really hard when he's not healthy for an entire season.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. We saw the difference between Joe Burrow to even Joe Flacco. this last few years, as well as a huge example of it. A huge example is there's been reports of him not being happy.
Yeah.
That's
Cincinnati ownership, get your grip together.
so. There's been so many talks of Joe Burrow not necessarily being happy with there. So the fact that you're going to try your best to really be able to make sure that he's able to stay happy, that's your number one question. So you really want to ensure that you're able to do something like that.
If you're happy, I'm happy, man. Come on, Joey B. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is can you really rely on the premium of Joe Burrow if he can't play a full season under his belt? Because when he does play, he's a really good quarterback. But when he doesn't, it's a lot of concerns. And obviously, the second thing is this defense. Do these defensive assets really bolster your defensive roster, or is it an Al Golden thing, right? Can some of those guys take the step up? It's just a overall all defensive thing across the board. Can you maintain pass rushing upside without Trey Hendrickson? The biggest question, I think, out of all your defense I have is the linebacking core, right? You did not, the linebacking core, right? Demetrius Knight, Barrett Carter, you drafted them second round and I think third or fourth round last year. You didn't make, they were the worst linebacking core in the entire league, and you did not make any changes, any upgrades to that linebacking core at all. So I guess the main question I have for Cincinnati is, are you saying, hey, man, it was just because of we didn't have a good defensive line presence across there. They had to do so much work, right? They're younger guys. We'll expect them to play better next year when they have experience under their belt. Or is it the fact that, hey, these guys are like a Shamar Stewart pick? I'm not saying, I could say Shamar Stewart will be better in the future, but right now it looks like, hey, these guys are Shamar Stewart picks. They're bums. They're not going to play well, but we just didn't have a lot of assets to go and get some of those guys, because there are still free agents out there. Bobby Okereke's out there. I think Matt Milano's still out there. Those are guys you could probably bring in, and you could say, hey, right now these guys are better than what we have. But the question is, right, can those guys make that second jump and actually become really solid linebackers, or are they going to drag down everything that you've done to try to remodel that defense?
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the most valid questions. I think you can point to a few things. Obviously, last year, this Bengals defensive line was very poor, especially both in pass and rush, especially when Trey Hendrickson went down. So you can throw, a situation where the D-line wasn't able to hold on their end, and therefore the linebackers getting more blocked, or even throwing the idea with Joe Burrow being injured, now you're relying on, the offense is going to be running the ball a lot more, which means you have a lot less chances of explosive plays, especially with that defensive line being so poor as it was last year. So you can throw those ideas. You look at both these players. Darius Knight was a player that they drafted who was older.
25, yeah.
Yeah, he was drafted. You expected him to be kind of that veteran, not necessarily a veteran, but to be able to play not like a rookie.
Right.
With him being such an older prospect, and he comes in, that's exactly what he is. He is a rookie that's very limited when it comes to athleticism. Barrett Carter's the exact opposite. He was a younger guy. He's a guy that did a little bit of everything for Clemson. He was extremely athletic, played a little bit of everything, and then especially last year when he was thrown in with so many, because they end up losing Logan Wilson, who they traded away. So you had to throw in Barrett Carter, and he comes in and he's a guy that's very athletic, but doesn't necessarily have a spot where he's thrown into. He's one of those players that, like Isaiah Simmons that we've seen, is good at a lot of things, but not great at one thing. And he's not able to stick and be able to use his athleticism, but instead he's being targeted for things that he's not great at.
Yeah.
So I do think that there are better prospects and better players out there right now, if that's where they go. It's another thing where it's a timeline situation. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase are all guys that are at their prime or are arguably even a little bit past, especially someone like T. Higgins who dealt with so many injuries. So is it worth waiting for those linebackers and hoping you're able to make another jump to be able to be in their so-called prime? Or do you go and get a guys that might be past their prime, but are arguably better leaders and might be able to add more experience and value day one?
Yeah, I certainly think the Bengals, that's a big concern. I certainly think the Bengals, out of all these teams, have the most upside to make the biggest jump.
Yeah.
Because of, Joe Burrow being hurt and really addressing this defense. I just want to see it happen, and I think it's the same thing with this AFC North team is, unlike a lot of ones where it's like, man, these guys are really good, right? Who's going to compete, but these guys are getting up there. Who's going to compete? It's almost like the NFC South, which is, hey, here's a bunch of mediocre teams that just have been okay, but have some have some really solid upside. Which one of those teams is going to make the jump? Is it the Browns by a miracle shot? Is it the Bengals, finally being healthy and having a productive defense? Is Aaron Rodgers going to go back to his glory days? Or is it Lamar Jackson going to go back to kind of his glory days? So certainly a lot of questions with the AFC North.
Yeah.
Certainly a lot of big trades.
I think the last comments, especially by the Bengals, if you're looking at them, there's no excuses for Zach Taylor anymore.
Yes, I 100%. I 100% agree.
If the Bengals don't make the playoffs this year, I don't see a situation where Zach Taylor comes back.
No, I don't either.
Of injuries, he's had a long tenured leash basically there, and especially last year where they dealt with so many situations. But there needs to be some sort of change if they are not able to go at least to the playoffs with that sort of talent on their team. So that we kind of gone through all 4 teams. So
long episode, man, but that wraps it up. We had a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say all 4 of these teams improved to last year. If that's bringing in younger players, if that's bringing in a younger defensive minded coach, or just trying to get healthier. Regardless, all four of these teams did get better. All of them have sort of a timeline, right? I want to say. The Browns, I think, is the most questionable of, are they going to fully go into the rebuild, which I think they should go, kind of place they've been the last 25 years, or are they going to bank everything on what they have in Deshaun Watson and able to bring a whole new dynamic quarterback in there with, what Todd Monken's able to do with him? Is this Aaron Rodgers? Is he able to go out with a bang? Bengals, are they finally able to everyone stay healthy for one last run, or not one last run, but finally be able to stay healthy? Is Jesse Minter able to get the most out of Lamar Jackson's defense?
Find out next time on the 2026 NFL season. Josh, it's great to be here. It's great to be with you in person. Thank you for everyone who joined and was here. Thank you for everyone who watched the video. Yeah. Thank the world, man. It's just great. I mean, I love this. We're having a lot of fun here. Let us know what you guys think about the AFC North and how messy it is. We appreciate everyone being around. We're having fun. If you're not having fun, you're done. But Josh, it's great to see you in person, buddy. Thank you so much for another great episode. And
real quick, we do send out a few video clips on a few different platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. That will come out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Those are a few clips from this show. So, go let us know if you like it, dislike it. If you want to start arguments in there, we'll try our best to respond. Other than that,
be controversial. Be controversial towards us. We could take it. But shameless plug, man. I love that. Gotta do it.
We have a good friend in this chat as well. Talk Back with Zach. He's a fantastic streamer. He does a lot of calls, like shows with people calling during the time, so it's a really cool app. That's
an elite plug-in, man. That's my boy. Yeah.
But without further ado, James, I don't have anything else.
I'm all set, man.
All right.
I'm all set. Peace, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you, guys.